I'm walking south through Puckeys. I'm starting to transition into a different part of the reserve, into different vegetation communities. So it's probably a good spot I'm trying to get my face centered there out of the sun. It's probably a good time to say something about the sorts of tools that are here. So I've referred to them obliquely so far to some extent. But of course, in terms of regulation, essentially what we have here is an area of land that's been enclosed through law, based on the Local Government Act, New South Wales 1993, and designated as a natural area. So natural areas are areas of mostly urban bushland in New South Wales. They can be wetlands as well. They're quite variable, and councils, as I said before, are obliged to manage them for their environmental values, and Puckeys is one of them. I've made reference to the work that's being done here, the bush care work, so that's a participatory element. So a lot of council environmental management work of this nature, bush regeneration sort of work, is carried out by volunteers, and New South Wales has quite an extensive bush care, coast care, dune care kind of networks, and there is a bush care group here, that Puckeys, which has been active for a very long time and who do a lot of the labour on the ground. So that volunteer workforce is key to a lot of environmental and biodiversity management at the local government level. So the other thing that's really interesting here at Puckeys is that there's also a market-based instrument that's been used to manage the situation here and to provide resources for environmental management. So if you remember from the lectures and other material that you should have read by now, market-based instruments are a way to basically facilitate, if you like, trading of rights to develop land in return for some sort of environmental benefit. So the theory is that through some sort of trading system you end up with net environmental gains. And New South Wales has had various schemes, and the one that's been implemented here is one that is actually now been superseded by another scheme, but it's called the biobanking scheme. And that's usually something that involves private landholders. Private landholders can generate resources to manage their land for biodiversity by trading. Basically, they might give up the right to develop their land in return for some sort of return, and that generates credit that, say, for example, someone else who wants to develop land can buy those credits and use that as to develop or clear some other land. And there's various permutations of that. Part of the biobanking scheme at one point was that, in fact, entities such as local governments could apply, could enter into that scheme and generate credits to access resources from the state government to manage biodiversity, and that's what happened here. So basically Wollongong City Council entered into a biobanking agreement whereby they agreed to manage the biodiversity here at Puckeys, and in return for that they were granted close to $1 million by the New South Wales State Government. That money has been invested in some way and is now generating a return that will be used to manage Puckeys in perpetuity. So what happens to those credits that were generated through this trade? Now, of course, because Puckeys is already protected, if those credits went on to the biodiversity credit market, not only would you get no net gain in environmental senses, but you would actually get a loss. It would be akin to a kind of double dipping. So what's happened to those credits is that they have been what's called retired, and they cannot be traded on the biodiversity credits market. But that money now is available for council to manage Puckeys, to enhance their management here at Puckeys in perpetuity.